Welcome back to Dancing in the Kitchen. Today we're going to work on some Rumba. Actually, we're not going to work on any specific steps today. We're just going to talk about the feet, the knees, the hips, the center, and the back. These are the most important parts of the body that we're going to use in every single step in this dance. All right, so let's begin. So first, the feet. So with the feet, you always want to have your feet slightly turned out, okay? Depending on the step. Certain steps, when we're walking, for example, forward, maybe you'll have a little bit less turnout. When you're walking back, you may have a little bit more turnout, or when you're stepping to the side. So it all really depends on the type of figure that we're dancing. But for the most part, you want to have a nice turnout of the feet. You want to keep the pressure always on the inside edges of the feet. So what that means is towards the balls of the feet at all times. The only time where you're going to have it on the outside edge is when your foot is going, when you're moving backwards and your foot is pointing forward. In this case, we're going to present the foot and the foot has a nice turnout. Same thing when you go to the side, your foot will have a nice turnout. Okay? So for all the other positions, if you're going forward, you're going to have that inside edge also with the foot turned out. So on all steps, you want to have the inside edge pressure at all times. So this is a really good exercise you can do by just lifting the heels off the floor and trying to get on the inside edges of the balls of the feet. Okay? So it's a little just lifting and dropping the heels and bringing that pressure towards the inside. And for all the males, for all the gentlemen, you're going to keep your heels slightly lower. For the ladies, you can actually go towards the nail of the foot, so much higher. So you have more articulation of that foot to lift up and show off your beautiful shoes and your beautiful foot action. Okay? Now, when we're walking, we're going to walk and we're going to distribute our weight into three parts. First, we're going to walk with the weight on the whole foot. Then we're going to move to the middle of the foot. Then we're going to move towards the middle of the foot, so the ball of the foot, and then we're going to move towards the nail of the foot. Okay? So when we're doing a Rumba walk, we'll get more into detail on the next video about that. You want to make sure you're rolling through that foot. Okay? So, and when we're rolling, we're using that inside edge of the foot at all times. Okay? Now, the feet are going to go up and down and turning inwards. So the right foot's going to turn to the left foot's slightly going to move to the right. Now, let's talk about the knees. With the knees, you want to make sure that there's always a straightening action. So one leg will be straight, one leg will be bent. So this, you want to bring that knee forward and then back. Okay? So the knees only go in one direction. It's important, especially for people with knee issues, that you don't want to have your foot turned in too much when your knee turned in too much when your feet are turned out. So you want to make sure that they're lined up correctly, one over the other. Now, for the ladies, when you're doing your leg action, you can create a little bit more twist together with the hip to get that knee to cross behind. So basically, you never want to have your legs opened up too much. So the legs are always twisting and creating a nice compact action. But really all they're doing is going forward and back. So pretty much in every single step, you're always going to have a bent to a straight action. Regardless if you're doing American style or international style, the timing might be different, but the action is the same. You're going to flex and then straighten, flex and then straighten. Okay, now let's talk about the hips. So there's a lot of different hip actions that you can do. You can do a settling action, you can do a lateral action, you can do a rotational action, you can do a twisting action. But we're going to just summarize the basic hip action and what the hip does. So basically every time you get on the leg, you want to settle that hip. You want to make sure your hip does not go out to the side too much though. So that's where people create a lot of issues for their hip and their balance, is when they pop that hip, you can feel where your hip bone is out too much to the side. So as soon as you feel your weight is over that leg, you want to rotate that hip and actually settle it or twist it backwards, right? So you can see my hip goes side and slightly back towards like the heel of the foot. Same thing if I'm on this leg, it'll go side and back. So one thing I don't want to do is push my hip out too much to the side. So I want to keep it under the body, under the rib cage, and creating this nice rotational action. Okay? Now when we have figures like the cucaracha, which we'll get into in the future, you want to create almost like a rotational figure 8 action. So I'm doing a circular action of my left foot, and then a circular action over my right foot, creating this infinity or figure 8 sign or position or movement. Okay? So same thing here. You can bring the hip forward a little bit. You can bring it to the side. You can bring it back, forward, side, back. But the idea is, again, you don't want to go too far past the foot. You want to keep the weight over that standing foot. And in the cucaracha, your weight is actually going to be a little bit more in the middle. So you're not going to fully transfer the weight, and you want to keep both heels on the floor. But talking about just specifically about the hips, you're going to create a nice rotational hip action. Okay? Now, if you want to create a little bit more advanced action, you're going to create a little bit more rotation of that hip. So that hip is not only going to go back, but it's almost like it's going behind your back. So if you think about the hips, and then you got your torso, you want to create more twisting of that hip. So it's going to happen especially on figures like your hip twist for the ladies. So when you're going to go back, then you're going to go forward, you're going to think of twisting or bringing that left hip back in order to bring that leg across. But we can actually create that twisting anywhere if you want to create a more advanced, developed walk. All right? So anytime we take that step, we can create more twist of that hip. More twist. Okay? So ultimately you want to combine all those actions of the settling, the rotation, the twisting together, right? And depending on the figure, you might have to adjust the amount of each of those actions. But keep in mind, the feet are going up and down, slightly inwards. The knees are going bent and straight. The hips are going side and back, side and back. Okay? And then sometimes they'll even go slightly forward, like when your foot is passing, just before it goes back. Okay? Now let's talk about the core, or the center, and the hips as well, together with the core. So you want to keep your center in at all times. You want to feel nice and active. You want to make sure that your hips are lined up nicely with that core. So one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to extend your hips backwards, especially when you're taking leg action like a back break. You want to keep that nicely tucked in at all times. And you don't want to distort the position too much, because that's going to look a little bit awkward. Now, it's important to keep that center almost like rounded, like you're putting on a belt or some tight pants. So it's nicely rolled in, but you don't want to contract it too much, because then you're going to have a hard time breathing, and then you can see my posture is not great, right? So you want to bring it in, activate it, but don't squeeze it too much, okay? The next thing we could talk about is the back. So when you're doing the back, the important part is the same as the core. You want to bring the back nicely forward. So you don't want to pop the chest. You want to relax the chest. You want to lengthen the spine And you basically want to keep your arms slightly in front at all times. Right? And that's your position. Now, talking more about the back and the center, when we're dancing and the feet, let's say we're on our left foot, and then we're going to transfer weight to the right foot. We're going to lower onto that heel, we're going to start to straighten the leg, we're going to start to release that hip, we're going to start to contract our right abdominal muscles, and we're going to contract our sides here through the back. So our back, lat muscles are going to contract, same thing with our abdominal muscles, and that's going to create more release of that hip. Okay? And notice at the same time the other leg releases and goes forward. So we can go heel down, straighten the leg, contract the abdominal muscles, contract the lats, and then release the hip. And then same thing. So it's like a piston. One goes down, one goes up. Now, if you don't contract the hips in the back, the abdominal muscles in the back, you're going to get this up and down rising action. So you don't want that. There's no elevation change in the basic steps of Rumba. So the only thing that's moving is the feet and the hips. Right? The knees are going to just bend and straighten, and then the back is creating this contraction. So I'm contracting the right side, now the left side throughout the dance. Same thing with the abdominal muscles. I'm contracting one, then the other. Right? So you got the contraction and then the stretch. Okay? And that's basically it. So in every single step, always keep in mind, think of that ball heel action, straightening the leg, releasing that hip, contracting the core, contracting the back. Take a step forward, same thing with the foot. And then go ball flat, knee will be straightened, contract, contract. I go to the side, same thing, contract, and then contract. Okay? Now, with the feet, every time I take a step to the side, you always want to make sure you turn that foot out. So if you go forward, you're going to turn the back foot out. If you're going to go back, you're going to turn the front foot out. If you're going to the side, you're going to turn the foot out. So the weight on the standing foot is just going to be under the body. The free leg, you always want to create that nice turn out of that foot. Basically, I'm always showing off my free leg, the one without the weight. Okay, so you don't want to do, you never want to have the foot turned in, such as this. Right? So same thing if you're going to do an American box step, there's always a turn out of the feet at all times. Okay? And that's it for today. Oh, if you enjoy these lessons, these videos, please subscribe, like this video, and comment below.